Thank you, Speaker. I should like to address the Workers' Compensation Legislation Amendment Bill by first acknowledging the deep concerns I have with the government's proposed changes. Changes that, if passed in their current form, risk turning this state's back on some of the most vulnerable members of the workforce. We all want a workers' compensation system that is financially sustainable. That is not in dispute. But there is a right way and a wrong way to achieve that balance. And this bill isn't even on the scale. Firstly, let's deal with the simple matter of timing. The government claims this legislation is urgent. That is simply not true. The premiums for 2025-26 have already been set. The premiums for 2026-27 will be determined after March next year, based on the valuation from 30 December. So why the rush in June 2025? Surely the budget that is due later this month hasn't been so badly managed this past year that their only salvation lies in slash and burn. Surely it can't be for a few days of cheap political announcements. None of what is happening makes sense. To rush this bill without scrutiny and review won't even save money for businesses in the immediate term, but it will hasten the erosion of injured worker protections. So perhaps they don't understand psychosocial injury or appreciate the decades of work that have gone into teaching people about its causes and impacts. Perhaps they don't understand the importance of acknowledging mental health, talking about it, and educating society that to experience poor mental health is extraordinarily common and a challenge that is fixable with the right interventions. Certainly, it's not something to shy away from, avoid treatment of, or in the worst instance, withdraw support from. Let's be honest, compared to physical injuries, mental injury claims are more complex, but they are no less real than physical ones. They deserve to be treated with dignity, not suspicion. Frankly, we've spent decades as a parliament elevating mental health in the minds of the public. How some members, who have been here far longer than I, now appear to have forgotten that fact can be symptomatic only of a government being told what to think, not thinking for itself. That betrays the responsibility of this place and betrays the generation of workers who will be impacted into the future. I'm sure many of my generation find the different standard that's being applied to psychosocial injury compared to physical injury reflective of a time gone by. I'm disappointed and frustrated to once again see the political class in government so out of touch with a generation offering the most potential. This approach is destined to make them the ones with the most to lose. It is unbecoming of any government, but particularly a Labor one. For all their stated values and traditions, this bill strays very, very far. Right now, a worker suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, or other psychological harm can access support under our workers' compensation system. This bill would limit that access. It would raise the impairment threshold for ongoing support, making it so hard that around 99% of people who are psychosocially injured at work would be denied compensation. 99%. Just let that sink in. That is akin to abolishing the scheme and is reflective of the highest order hypocrisy for all their moralising about being a workers' party. They aren't a workers' party. They're a party of shortcuts, lacking big vision and desperate for quick money to prop up a broken budget. So who pays? People like the store manager in his late 30s with no prior mental health issues who was violently assaulted while closing his store. He was later diagnosed with PTSD and persistent depressive disorder. He's been unable to work since, despite attempts to return. His psychological injury left him with flashbacks, panic attacks, insomnia, memory loss, and total incapacity for work. His condition was requiring inpatient hospital stays and multiple rounds of medication. And his assessed WPI? 24%. Now, under this bill, that worker's access to long-term support could be removed because his injury does not clear a new arbitrary threshold of 31%. And so what is the message to that worker? That his pain doesn't count? That his life has not changed forever? How can they, with their values, their traditions and their stakeholders, look a store worker in the eye and say an act that was out of his control, that has forever changed his life is deserving of nothing. And all for what? A quick sugar hit in business coverage in the local media. It's pathetic. And this isn't even an isolated case. The case files are overflowing with workers, nurses, corrections officers, teachers, warehouse staff, people who've given everything to their work only to be left shattered when the job breaks them. And they're now being told, you cost too much. And the worst part is, the government doesn't deny that this bill is about cutting costs. But in reality, it's seeking to balance the books on the backs of broken people. There is a moral dilemma here. It is one thing to say the system needs reform. It's another to do so by ripping away support from those who need it most, without any credible investment in prevention or early intervention. You cannot, in good conscience, gut compensation for psychological injuries while doing nothing to prevent them. That is the equivalent of saying, healthcare costs too much, let's just treat some conditions. Or in education, only schooling some kids depending on where they live. Or in crime, deciding to protect some communities and not others. We don't do that. Instead, we find ways to stop people getting sick, to innovate and make offering quality education more affordable. We engage early intervention to drive down crime. We don't accept arbitrary exclusions in other parts of our society. We strive to support everyone, so why should that stop in the workplace? What makes this even more jarring is the backflip by many on the government benches. I've reviewed public statements made by government members over several years. Many of them have expressed strong views in defence of workers, in support of mental health reform, and against cuts to frontline entitlements. Now, they are being asked to abandon those views to ram through a bill that strips workers of dignity, support, and agency. And I want to say this as a new member of this House. I've approached this issue on its merits. I don't feel wedded to the legacy of a former government, nor am I vested in my interest. My interest is in the principle, and I'm telling you on the principle that this bill cannot pass in its current form. And that's why I'll be supporting amendments put forward by the opposition, which I believe strikes a more reasonable balance and achieves a scheme that is sustainable without abandoning the integrity of its core mission. These amendments are reasonable, they help to sustain the budget, they restore balance, and they keep protections for those with serious psychological injury. And if these amendments are rejected, we will be insisting on an inquiry, because none of us should sit comfortably knowing we've made it harder for injured workers to seek compensation. Let me finish by returning to the core point. This bill is not about sustainability, this is about shortcuts. It's about saving money without the hard graft of decent and considered reform. Reform that would focus on preventing psychological harm, investing in intervention, and creating safer workplaces for all. We have a choice here. We have a choice to put this bill through, cut costs on the most vulnerable and hope that no one notices, or we can take the time to get this right, protect workers who've already lost so much, and send a message that mental health really does matter. I know the choice that I'll be making, and I urge all members in this House to do the same.